vote against other government policies to register how enraged you are that they are potentially putting our lives at risk?
Well, first of all, we have a
Rachel Reeves' appearance on live television with Piers Morgan turned into one of the most talked about political moments in recent memory. Watching her navigate Morgan's relentless grilling was like seeing someone trying to calmly explain a plan while a storm swirled around them. It's hard not to feel frustrated when an intelligent and capable leader like Reeves gets constantly interrupted and misrepresented.
Cases of COVID-19, something the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer is also calling on Boris Johnson to do in England.
So we are joined now by the Shadow Cabinet Minister Rachel Reeves for the Labour.
The entire interview felt like a setup to trap her in an impossible position. Piers Morgan, known for his aggressive interviewing style, seemed determined to pick apart Labour's plans before even giving Reeves a chance to elaborate. Every time she began to articulate her points, he would cut in, throwing another loaded question or pulling out an anecdote designed to corner her.
Member of the Labour Shadow Cabinet, do you think that's a good decision or not?
I'd have to look into the detail of what the decisions have been made. I don't like to just,
Let's be honest, no one walks into an interview with Piers Morgan expecting an easy ride. But there's a difference between tough questioning and sheer antagonism. Morgan's approach wasn't about seeking clarity, it was about creating a spectacle. It felt like his goal wasn't to explore Labour's policies, but to make Reeves stumble. And when you're dealing with someone as sharp as Reeves, you have to resort to interrupting, twisting words and misrepresenting facts to make them look bad.
Offered Piers our support to take this circuit break through the House of Commons. We've tried to be a constructive opposition. We've tried to support the government.
But now you've taken the gloves off. With respect, Reggie,
Take the moment when Morgan brought up Labour's housing promises. Reeves, as always, was measured and thoughtful in her response, explaining Labour's goal to build 1.5 million homes by the end of the Parliament. She didn't shy away from acknowledging the scale of the challenge. Instead, she emphasised that Labour's housing plans are rooted in addressing the very real and pressing issues facing millions of people in the country.
anything that's been in the news has serious consequences for cross-sections of the community, shouldn't you?
Well, we're facing a global pandemic at the moment. Labour made important announcements yesterday about the need for a circuit break to protect our NHS, get control of the virus and sort the test and trace system.
But Morgan wasn't interested in the how or the why. Instead, he derailed the conversation with loaded questions about migrants and vague insinuations about the practicality of Labour's vision. He ignored the fact that Reeves and her team have spent months crafting detailed plans to tackle the housing crisis, a crisis that the Conservatives have utterly failed to address for over a decade.
Consideration, and I don't think politicians or anyone should do that without looking at the details first. And I'm not going to do it on your programme this morning.
Labour politicians have been pretty vocal about this. They've been leading the...
The irony, of course, is that Morgan's anecdotes about housing only highlighted how broken the system is today. He reminisced about a time when getting on the housing ladder was easy, no deposit, 100% mortgages, and a helping hand from a guarantor. That world doesn't exist anymore. And it's precisely because of years of failed policies and neglect. Reeves wasn't dismissing the challenge, she was presenting a plan to fix it. But it's easier to criticise than to contribute.
Government pleading with the Prime Minister to take a different course now. The Prime Minister and the government are going down one path, it's the wrong path. We urge them to think again, and we've offered...
What stood out during the interview was how Reeves consistently tried to bring the focus back to Labour's commitment to fairness and opportunity. When Morgan pressed her on Labour's tax policies, she didn't dodge the question. Instead, she explained the rationale behind targeting employer national insurance contributions over income tax hikes. It's a policy designed to strike a balance, ensuring businesses contribute their fair share without disproportionately burdening working people. Morgan tried to spin this as a contradiction, but it's a reflection of Labour's nuanced approach to governance. Reeves understands that governing isn't about easy answers, it's about making tough choices that serve the greater good.
Break, other than, as we know from the first lockdown, you've suppressed the virus for the period of time of the lockdown, but as soon as you lift it after a fortnight...
And then there's the WASPI campaign. This is where Reeves faced some of the harshest criticism, largely unfairly. The changes to the state pension age have been a devastating blow for many women, and Reeves acknowledged their pain. But as Shadow Chancellor, She also has a responsibility to ensure that Labour's policies are financially viable.
Constructive suggestions on PPE, on testing, on tracing, on support for the self-employed. So we have put forward those suggestions in the past, and the government have eventually accepted them. And we hope that will be the case with the circuit break. And Keir Starmer offered yesterday to work with the Prime Minister to introduce it. We will support.
Her decision not to pledge costly compensation wasn't about dismissing the struggles of these women. It was about being honest about what's possible within the constraints of the budget. That honesty is rare in politics, and it should be celebrated, not attacked. Unlike others who make empty promises for applause, Reeves is willing to have the tough conversations and make the tough calls.
Spots in local communities, and at the end, local directors of public health know their area much better than executives or call centre handlers at Serco.
If the government ignores you and chooses not to do a circuit breaker, what will you do as a party?
What's frustrating is how easily Morgan and other critics overlook the bigger picture. Reeves isn't just another politician making noise, she's a leader with a vision. Under her stewardship, Labour has outlined ambitious plans to revitalise public services, invest in green energy, and build a fairer economy. These aren't just lofty ideals, they're carefully thought out policies grounded in real-world solutions. But instead of engaging with these ideas, Morgan chose to focus on sound bites and gotcha moments.
Reeves, can I just ask, are you acting on the silence, or are you acting on the criticism that the Labour Party has not been strong enough in its opposition to what the government has been doing? For instance, on the 10 p.m. curfew, we've spoken to a number of your...
Let's not forget the broader context here. The Conservatives have had years to address issues like housing, the economy, and social inequality. And they've failed spectacularly. The cracks in their governance are everywhere, from the NHS crisis to the state of the nation's infrastructure. Labour, under leaders like Rachel Reeves, is stepping up with a plan to fix what's broken. Yet, instead of acknowledging this, critics nitpick and distort.
Which you have so far supported every step of the way on every measure they brought in. If they decide to totally ignore you and you think there's a genuine imminent threat to...
What's particularly infuriating is how Morgan's tactics overshadowed the substance of what Reeves was saying. She came to the interview ready to discuss Labour's vision for a fairer, more prosperous Britain. She wanted to talk about how Labour would tackle the housing crisis, create good jobs, and ensure everyone has access to quality public services. But Morgan wasn't interested in that. He was more concerned with scoring cheap points and creating viral moments.
People died, the highest number of deaths for 4 months. The government now need to urgently take action. They can't sit this out for another few weeks.
Despite the hostile environment, Reeves held her ground. She remained calm and composed even as Morgan talked over her and twisted her words. That takes incredible strength and resilience. It's easy to sit back and criticise from the sidelines, but imagine being in her shoes, trying to explain complex policies while being interrupted and misrepresented at every turn. Reeves didn't back down, and that says a lot about her character. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.